Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our Out of the Box International podcast series. I'm your host, Enrique Martos, and today we are approaching the third pillar of our strategy 2023-2025, social cohesion and solidarity. Today, we are going to frame the EU cohesion policy due to its vital importance for the development of a strong and efficient European Union under the motto, leaving no one behind. The information we are sharing today is sourced from the European Commission's webpage, and we will try to shed some light on the significant impact of the cohesion policy funding for the period 2021-2027. Now let's dive into the details. The EU cohesion policy is the European Union's main investment mechanisms. It provides benefits for all regions and cities in the EU and supports economic growth, the creation of jobs, competition, sustainable development, and protection of the environment. So we can see here that we have the big elephant today in the room. The primary objectives of this funding are the promotion of lasting socioeconomic transition, territorial cohesion, a social and inclusive Europe, and a smooth, fair, green, and digital transition. There are 5 main bullets to disseminate here. First of all, a smarter and more competitive Europe, with the commitment to support research and innovation while addressing the digital gap. The goal is to provide improved research facilities and support innovation and smart growth of companies. The policy also aims to modernize and digitalize public services and promote the digital transformation of businesses. Second, towards a net zero carbon economy and more resilient Europe. Green investments take the central stage in the European Union cohesion policy aligned with the European Green Deal objectives. Projects in energy efficiency and renewable energy are crucial components contributing to the Repower EU plan, aims at rapidly decreasing the European Union's dependency on fossil fuels. Third, towards a just transition, it must be ensured that no one is left behind in the transition to climate neutrality. The cohesion policy supports SMEs, small and medium enterprises, to gain new skills for smart specialization, industrial transition, and entrepreneurship. Support measures in the labor market will assist up to 120,000 unemployed people, and almost 200,000 people will gain new qualifications. Fourth, a more social and inclusive Europe. Throughout the year 2023, the so-called European Year of Skills, the EU has been working to boost its target. 30% of adults in training and 78% of them in employment by 2030. Different EU initiatives have been launched, such as the Pact for Skills, where partnerships in key sectors are committed to improving the skills of up to 6 million people. Special attention is given to improving the integration and inclusion of more than 3 million people, including 600,000 in marginalized groups, such as Roma people. And last but not least, fifth, a more connected Europe. Efficient transport system will receive support at all territorial levels. The policy plans to build or modernize trans-European railway lines. Having said this, in line with the goals of the EU cohesion policy, today I have the pleasure to introducing you to someone that I personally admire. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it just because he's my boss, but because he has been courageous enough to pursue his own dream and strive for the creation of his own organization. I'm glad to introduce Marko Paunovic. the founder of Out of the Box International, a European network operating in the youth field and currently active in 24 European countries. This network brings together 32 diverse organizations, all of whom share a common goal: advocating and raising awareness for more innovative, youth-focused, and supportive policies across Europe. Marko, welcome to our podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's absolute pleasure for me as well to be in your podcast, Enrique. And I hope we won't make it boring today.
Definitely not. To start off, could you tell our audience a bit about your journey and what inspired you to set up Out of the Box International?
So Out of the Box International was founded in 2013 in Brussels, just shortly after a big economic crisis, which hit Europe and European Union, and we have realized already existing tools and the project initiatives doesn't really deal with this crisis in the right way. Being in Brussels, seeing this political spectrum, decision-making and organization presence here, we said, let's create something new. Let's create organization which is not going to advocate and lobby for the sectoral interests here in Brussels, but a rather organization which will look for innovative and fresh ideas in the policy dialogues. So we have created Out of the Box in 2013. And we said, let's combine different experiences, like people from politics, people from business, or people from civil sector. And that was exactly how we did it. We created Out of the Box following the philosophy of 9 dots. That's our sign, 9. So if you look at for this, if you Google it, you'll find that the philosophy of 9 dots also symbolize looking and thinking outside of the box. Dealing with economic crisis of 2009, and after that, we thought we could focus on some certain areas, like the topic of today's podcast is definitely social cohesion and inclusion and related topics, political participation, but also how to make more business social. Currently, also, we are addressing the climate crisis. As you said, we are present in 24 European countries, gathering different profile of organizations. So really, I also use this podcast to invite maybe some new partners, new organizations to come and join Out of the Box, because I can promise it won't be a boring work. So we really try to make it interesting, but also challenging, and produce good outputs that can be used in the political debate here in Brussels, but also in other countries.
Definitely. That's truly inspiring. And you all hear it, dear listeners. If you are working on the topic of youth in the youth field, you can get in contact with Out of the Box, specifically with Marko, and see the further possibilities for cooperation here. The following question is regarding if you could share with us some examples of the kind of work and initiatives that Out of the Box is involving currently, and especially related to the concept of the episode of today, social cohesion and solidarity.
So we are, as I said, we are working for different priorities for this strategic plan, but within the topic of fresh ideas for for solidarity and social inclusion as well, social cohesion, I would speak about maybe two or three projects, just to illustrate how we do it. So I would start first, as you mentioned, Enrique, as well in the introductory notes, Aroma. I would like to take one Roma project. It was implemented a couple of years ago. This project was called Roaming. Don't ask me why there is this topic, but we basically try to build a capacity of Roma organizations from the Western Balkans to better understand European policies and EU funding schemes, to empower them to access the finance for their local initiatives, and to empower them to build some kind of national action plans for the inclusion of young Roma. So our partnership or our contribution in this project brought these young Roma people to Brussels, where they visit different institutions, learned how the EU is working, and also resulted with some concrete follow-up projects. So this is a project roaming. I think this is a very sensitive target group, as Roma it is, but it requires a special attention. In the same time, we like to enter the formal education settings. We've been developing in the last couple of years our activities within the service learning projects. So we implemented the project SLUSIC, and now there is a new project starting. It's called SLEEPS. So what is the idea? Idea is that service learning, which is a special kind of learning where within the classroom, the part of the curricula is also developing a social projects where the students develop social projects, address the concrete needs, the concrete target groups with different activities. And so we have this kind of learning is becoming more and more popular because it's also very socially engaged. We helped different universities and schools around Europe to make it work better, to provide our expertise in training, but also help European partners to strengthen a little bit the visibility of service learning at European level. As always, we try to be a European partner over here. It's important to have inclusive education where all, for example, young people are equally treated in education, but also it's important education addresses the needs of the community, especially vulnerable groups. And this is how we think that our outreach could be better in the society, especially when it comes to the social cohesion. So I take today these two projects. There are many others, so you can go to Out of the Box website, and in the section projects, you can find many similar initiatives.
Definitely. Thank you so much for this valuable insight. I believe that is really fulfilling and impactful work. It's clear that Out of the Box is making a real endeavor to have a social impact in Europe, as we can see with the implementation of these projects. However, I would like to ask you now, what's the first thing that springs in your mind when I say EU support to youth? Because if we follow the findings of the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion report in 2022, the feeling, and I took this extracted directly from the report, the feeling of young people between 15 to 30 years old is that the EU is making not very much of an effort or no effort at all, which outnumber those replying the EU is putting some effort or great deal of effort. What's your take on that?
Enrique, thank you for this. Usually people, when they say thank you for this, they don't know how to answer, but I know. Being in Brussels for 15 years, I could see how, first of all, the whole decision-making process in this town is complicated. You know, you have three main institutions, many institutional partners, and all of them dealing with young people somehow. So that makes the whole process of decision-making very complicated, a lot of interest groups, and very expensive in the same time. But also this process very often looks to the other people outside of the bubble a little bit, how to say, misunderstood. Yeah, so they think, oh, it is important very often to identify this is the priority, young people. Okay, let's support young people. Let's use the money for this. So it doesn't work like this. So first of all, I'm not kind of trying to excuse the EU for this, but in general, it's very complicated process. When it comes to youth and if EU is supporting youth or not, I think the EU definitely, especially after the crisis 2009, puts young people in the focus, in attention, because we see young people suffer the most from the economic crisis. The youth unemployment is higher than in all EU countries than an average employment. Young people are, in the most of the cases, most vulnerable and so on. So yes, I think it is the priority of the EU. Then what are the mechanisms of the EU to put this priority in practice is a different case. We have youth funding as only for the youth program is very small compared to some other things. But then if you look at different areas, if you look at entrepreneurship, if you look at the inclusion, if you look at higher education, education opportunities and so on, when you put all together, I don't think it's very little or small attention from the EU to the young people. I think in general, EU gives a lot of resources for the youth project. The problem is that maybe EU budget as it is also give a lot of money to some other areas, and these areas are maybe more interesting for some big players in the lobby sphere, like for example agriculture or digital. That's definitely where more budget goes. I think what could be definitely better, not only European level but also in the member states, is that young people are involved in the political processes from the beginning until the end. Very often they are used just as somebody who is present there and somebody who is being asked only when the process is somehow at the end. But I think we need to understand young people better by working with them from the beginning until the end in designing of the different priorities, designing of educational programs, designing on the work schemes. Very often they are left, and then finally we complain the young people didn't take part in it. So yes, understanding young people, supporting them from the beginning until the end, involving them in the processes definitely would increase the outreach to young people and also increase the benefits that is coming to them. So yes, I would say EU definitely is doing a lot. It could be definitely more if the support from member states would come in place.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your sincere opinion about this topic. I was really curious what would be your perspective, and here we have it, really valuable and really meaningful from my point of view. Now, just we are coming to the end of the podcast. Before we wrap up, do you have any words of advice or encouragement for our listeners who may be considering starting their own journey in the world of social cohesion and solidarity?
I'm not like the one that like to give the advices or this profound quotes. Definitely the things, the different initiatives and projects in the field of social cohesion and solidarity are not disappearing. We see that the target groups are maybe even more in need. I think upcoming sustainability challenges coming to the earth, like migrations and then related labor thing, will just create more work to be done. So if you are having passion for this, join us in efforts to make lives and participatory models of people with your opportunities more pleasurable for themselves. But if you don't have passion and don't have the energy for it, go for something easier, because this is really demanding area to work on.
Definitely. Well, thanks. Thank you so much, Marko, for those inspiring words. And thank you all, dear listeners, for joining us once again on this episode. This is all for today. I hope now you can have a clear view on what the EU cohesion policy is all about, as well as inspiration to promote solidarity and cohesion, even in the most reduced field of our lives. It would be definitely worth it and fulfilling. Thank you for joining us today on the Out of the Box International Podcast Series. If you found this episode useful, don't forget to subscribe, engage, and be part of the change. Until next time, keep thinking out of the box. This is your host, Enrique Martos, signing off Out of the Box International Podcast Series. Goodbye.